All right, everybody. Glad you're here. I tried to get with as many people as I could because I said we need a big book for this. You got to have a big book to play with this. But if you don't have one, I understand. But my sobriety date is September the 4th, 99, and for that I'm very, very grateful. I'm from the Primary Purpose Group in Dallas, Texas. I call it the mothership. We got a whole bunch of them started out all over the other place. People have come and gone and taken what they've learned and gone out into the hinterlands and do what we do, and it's pretty cool. And this meeting today is on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have a big book study at my group, and on Tuesdays there's anywhere from 150 to 200 people there for a big book study. Our Thursdays is a little less than that, and we've been doing it like that ever since we started. And because we have such a big outreach program, we've got a lot of people coming in from treatment centers and halfway houses and stuff like that. And I'm just assuming that everything is hunky-dory here in Nebraska with your local AA groups. But in Dallas, where I come from, there's a lot of times you go to an AA meeting and there's not much talk about the program. There's talks about our divorce and our work and our this and our that. And a lot of times people get in AA and they have no idea what the program is or whatever, and we have all these newcomers coming in, and so we developed this foundation meeting. And we've got people all over the world who have heard the foundation meeting and have taken it back to Denmark or Iceland or the south of France, and they've started that. I've got guys that I sponsor that have moved away from Dallas and moved to so-and-so, another state. And that's how they get into treatment centers, is they do a foundation meeting. Because my pitch to a new treatment center is, give me 1 hour, let me do what I do. Y'all have all the text there and all your little patients there. Let me do 1 hour. I'll leave. Y'all talk amongst yourselves. And if he wants to come back, we'll come back, and we'll be here till the cows come home. And it works every time. So when I introduce it at our meeting, we have a little intro that I say, and then whoever's conducting the meeting will leave the meeting, and a whole bunch of little ducklings follow along, and I say it's for the newcomer especially, but especially those guys or gals that have got a million desire chips over the years and they think they're AA slick. This is a darn good meeting. So without further, let's just get right into it. Because when I got here in September of 1999, that's exactly what I knew about staying sober. Nothing. I've got a boatload. Let's do a little audience participation. Who's been to treatment before? Who's been to more than one treatment? Who's been to more than 5? All right, we got some knuckleheads here. I love that. I say that lovingly because I am a knucklehead. All right, so it's cool. I had to explain that to the Icelanders, like, what's this knucklehead you talk of? And I explained to him, like, oh, we have those here too, yeah. It's kind of funny about, here we say, like, you're a big book thumper, or sometimes I've heard big book Nazi or something like that. They don't say that in Europe. We're the Taliban. so they don't do the Nazi thing in Europe. They're over that. But if you go to the title page in the big book, it says, Alcoholics Anonymous is the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. I dig that word, recovered. That's a whole different word than recovering. I'm not some sniveling, whining, always going to be in recovery. These cats who wrote this book, they worked the steps, they had a spiritual experience, they have recovered from the deadliest illness known to mankind. An illness so deadly it kills people that don't even have the disease. This is their book. This gives me some hope. And if you flip past the table of contents, you get into the part of a book that I never ever read. Because I am a big reader, right? I love to read. And I'll read anything, right? But you flip me this big book, I want to get to the meat and potatoes. But there's a lot of information prior to Bill's story that's very, very important. And in the preface of the big book, on the second paragraph, it says that this book has become the basic text for our society. Right? So they're qualifying the big book. They're saying that the big book is a textbook. Now, as far as I know, there's like 2 different kinds of books. There's textbooks and then there's like novels, right? I mean, Bill reads the latest John Grisham novel and it knocks his socks off. He may give it to me for the airplane ride home tomorrow and say, dude, you need to read this book. And I'll read it and I'll be enthralled with it. And I will probably never, ever read it again. And I may pass it off to one of my buddies. A textbook is totally different. You dig? A textbook gives you a problem, right? I mean, it's like in math class in first grade. We got there in first grade and the little teacher passed out math books to all of us kids. And unless you were the friggin' genius of the class, you didn't go to the end of the math book and start doing long division, right? Math, each chapter builds upon the previous chapter. First, we got to know our numbers. Then we're going to start out with some simple addition and then subtraction. They're going to give us a problem. They're going to give us a solution. And they're going to tell us how they got from the problem to the solution. That's the same thing this book does. It's a textbook. I'm going to study it. I'm going to refer to it over and over. Each chapter builds on the other. They're going to tell us the problem, alcoholism as they know it. They're going to tell us the solution, a spiritual experience. Then they're going to show us how to get from the problem to the solution, right? It's pretty simple. And he's like, well, why on God's green earth do you study this book? Well, flip the page, forward to the first edition. Now, I know a lot of groups out there, most groups actually, probably start their meetings off with, they read how it works. Our group Conscience, when we started this, our primary purpose, we elected not to do that. We read this first paragraph of the forward to the first edition. And this is how is it really, and let's break it down though. This is how it was written in 1939. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered. There's that word again. I love it. I love it. Have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. A hopeless state of mind and body. Now, what exactly is that? Well, here's a little definition. Back when I was doing what I was doing, in order for me to get through the day, I had to drink, and it was killing me. The most powerful desire for me to stay away from booze was of absolutely no avail. I drink no matter what. Let's put it a different way. In order for me to drink, in order for me to live, I had to drink, and it was killing me. That's called a conundrum, right? In order for me to live, I got to drink, and it's killing me. That's a hopeless condition of mind and body. I love this part. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. So they qualify it as a textbook, and they just tell us they're going to give me and you precise instructions on how they recovered. Well, what does precise mean? Precise means exact. No gray area, right? The big book tells me how to take the steps, when to take the steps, with whom to take the steps. Gives me prayers, promises, consequences all the way through. If I read through this book and I get a little hope and I want to get what they got, I got to do what they do. Precise instructions. I'll give you another illustration of precise. Let's say it's back in Dallas. It's my sweetie pie's birthday coming up, right? And I want to make a good impression, right? I want to do something really cool. I want to bake her this cake. And I don't know much about baking, but there's a little old lady down the block. She's been baking cakes for decades and decades. She goes to the state fair, wins gold prizes all the time. And so I go over to her house and I plead my case and I say, please give me your prize winning recipe. I want to make her a cake and I want to do something good. And after some hemming and some hawing, she cuts loose with her best recipe, right? And I go down to Central Market and I got the recipe and I buy the best ingredients that I can buy because I want to make a good impression for my sweetie pie. And I get home and I commence to mixing up all the ingredients, right? And I'm doing a good job, right? And I'm getting it all the way the recipe says. And there's a knock on my door. And it's a little old lady on the other side of my house. And she comes in and she's looking over my shoulder. I'm telling her I'm baking a cake for my sweetie pie. And she's looking over my shoulder and she says, baby, you're doing it all wrong. And I said, well, that's what the recipe calls for. She says, baby, I've been baking cakes longer than you've been alive. And I said, well, what should I do? She goes, you need to back off a little of this and do a little more of this. And I'm thinking, well, she's older than my grandma. She probably knows. So I do what she says. And I've got the oven preheating and I'm getting ready to put that cake in the oven to bake so I can make a good impression. And as I'm putting it in the oven, she stops me. And I said, what are you doing? I got to bake the cake. She goes, baby, you're going to burn it up. And I said, well, that's what the recipe calls for. She says, baby, I've been baking cakes longer than you've been alive. You're going to burn that cake up. And I said, well, what should you do? She said, you need to back it off. You need to cook that cake for 90 days at 90 degrees. Now, let me ask you a question. Is my cake going to turn out like that recipe? No. Why? Because I didn't follow the instructions. That's why. They're going to give me instructions in this book. It says, for them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. Alcoholics Anonymous has a lot of books. As Rick was saying earlier, got a lot of pamphlets too. There's lots of great information out there. I've read all the books. I got I got it all, right? The only place on God's green earth where there's instructions on how to take the steps is in this book and in this book only. It even says that on page 17 of the 12 and 12, right? The only place where there's instructions is in this book. And it says, we think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. So we've got some chapters later on in the book. We've got the doctor's opinion, right? Family afterward, to wives, to the employers, right? Why? To let those people out there know what's killing me. It's not my willpower. It's not because I don't love them. It's not because I'm a weak-willed SOB. I got an illness known as alcoholism, and there's lots of information for the alcoholic and for our family members and coworkers, et cetera, et cetera. And it says, and besides, we're sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. Well, we look at the small picture. When I got sober in 99, the small picture is, gosh, I get to hold a job again. I get to be sober. I get to become part of my family again. The taxpayers of Texas don't have to pay to put me in Homeward Bound anymore. You know, I get to pay my taxes, mow my lawn. That's the small picture. Since these 12 steps were written and adopted, there's well over 300 other fellowships that use the same 12 steps and 12 traditions. I mean, there's Narcotics Anonymous, Drug Addicts Anonymous, Methamphetamine. There's one called Lip Balm Anonymous. There's one called Messy's Anonymous. And I just moved, and they would relapse at my house if they saw it. The point is the 12 steps work when applied to whatever it is that's kicking my butt. And if you flip over, we get to the forward to the second edition. And in a very general way, this was written in 1955, 16 years after the book came out. And in a very general way, they tell about how the growth of AA. You know, and Bill and them had big designs on the growth of AA, but they started out painfully slow, you know. People weren't lined up around the block early on. But some key things happened. They kept at it, and they trusted God, and they kept doing the deal. And little by slowly, some articles are getting written, and next thing you know, they went, and I forget the year, but they went in 1 year from having 800 members to 8,000 members in a year. All right? But it says, if you want to know, I always heard in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, there ain't no muss in the big book. Well, I hate to burst that bubble, because on Roman numeral XVI, Roman numeral 16, for the Roman numerally impaired, XVI, it's the first muss in the big book. About 11 lines up from the bottom, it says, he suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. Right? Bill meeting Dr. Bob. The bottom of the page, it says, this seems to prove that one alcoholic could affect another as no non-alcoholic could. It indicated that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital for permanent recovery. Vital, necessary for life. It's telling me right there in the Roman numerals that my sobriety and my freedom is going to depend on me getting off my butt and finding somebody who was dying just like I was. Right? They're telling me right off the bat. If I say, well, I may say a bunch of stuff that's controversial, but if I get in hot water, it'll be on this. Roman numeral 20. XX. So they wanted to tell, when they wrote this part of the book, they wanted to tell kind of how the fellowship was doing. Now, this is not a scientific empirical study. In a general way, they asked the groups around at the time some background information on what's out there. But he says, of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. So back in the day, from 39 to 55, back in the day, half the room got sober and remained that way. That's pretty darn good, don't you think? 1 out of 2, 50 out of 100. There's not a treatment center on this planet today that sniffs 50%. You'd have to put a handful of them together to get 50%. You know what I'm saying? They were doing something right back in the day. It says, 25% sobered up after some relapses. So you had knuckleheads back in the day. They made it to AA, and for whatever reason, the job, the car, the girl, or whatever it was, they had their own ideas, and they went back out there. 25% of them came back and said, what the hell is it that you guys do? Right? They got in there. It says 2 out of 3 returned as time passed. There's some stuff that if you dig around in the archives, there's stuff that where groups were taking membership and all that stuff where they're tracking their membership. There was groups back in the day that were knocking out 8 out of 10. All right? Fast forward today, Alcoholics Anonymous estimates that less than 5% of the cats coming into Alcoholics Anonymous today worldwide will get 5 or more years. When I got sober in September of 99, if you look at the intergroup chip sales, again, it's not scientific, it's just based on sales, right? 22,000 people got Desire chips in Dallas, Texas, or Dallas County in 1999. So you would expect the following year they'd have about 11,000 one-year chips, right? Not so much. It was about 1,400. I just celebrated 14 years. That's less than 1%. Less than 1%. So what changed from 1955 to now? I mean, 100 proof vodka is still 100 proof vodka. Rotten, nagging spouses are still rotten, nagging spouses, and the IRS still sucks. They had problems back in. They were going through the Depression, World War II, all that good stuff. What changed? Well, let me break it down how they rolled back in the day and see if that matches up with your experience in AA. See, back in the day, we'll use Bill here. Bill's the guinea pig. He's on the front row. Bill's in treatment one more time, detoxing it, right? And it's not his first time. And Bill comes from a good, loving family. They love Bill to death. He's got a whole host of friends, and everybody's tried desperately to get him sober, and so is he. Yet he's in detox one more time. Well, the cats from AA back in the day, we go visit Bill while he's detoxing. And we sit down with Bill, and we identify with Bill, and we find out all we can about Bill, and we leave. We come back the next day, and we sit down with Bill, and we go through the whole thing. We explain alcoholism as we know it, and we leave. Now, after the 3rd or 4th day when I come to visit Bill, Bill knows a couple things. One being, I drank as much or more booze than he ever dreamed of, and he's dying, and I ain't. And he says, JK, I'm just like you. How in the hell do you stay sober? Now I got him. Now I get to lay out the program of action. Bill admits that he's a real alcoholic. He says he's willing to go to any length to get what's in this book. I become his sponsor. We go through this book as outlined in this book, right? And in a short amount of time, he goes from being in the gutter to a recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and now he's helping Rick. Does that sound anything like sitting around a damn table talking about your day? There you have it. Let's get into the meat and the potatoes, the doctor's opinion, because I got to know why it is that I'm here. Because I spent 11 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did not know what it meant to be an alcoholic. The doctor's opinion is primarily based on Dr. William Duncan Silkworth, worked at Towns Hospital in New York City, Central Park West. Dr. Silkworth, like a whole bunch of people in the roaring 20s, lost it all in the stock market crash. Needed a gig, lost his practice. He knew Charlie Towns. He always had an affinity for us drunks. Charlie Towns needed somebody to run Towns Hospital, and Dr. Silkworth took the gig. And I think he was making like $30 a week or something like that, right? During his tenure at Towns Hospital, and I think Knickerbocker, wherever he went after that, he worked with over 50,000 alcoholics and drug addicts, right? Towns Hospital was world famous back then for the Towns, Lambert, whatever. They had their procedure, right? And so Silkworth started working at Towns Hospital, right? And that's where he met Bill Wilson. And Silkworth always scratched his head because the treatment that they would give him for the vast majority of the people, I mean, the guy or the gal who's drinking themselves silly, right? Chris Raymond would call him a disco drunk. They're drinking too much, and they're going to lose it all, and they get to this hospital, and they nurse them back to health with Belladonna and hydrotherapy, and they give them good meals, and they counsel them about alcoholic abuse or whatever. And this person that doesn't want to lose their job or their family or all of the above, they leave the hospital and live happily ever after. And then there was a small percentage of people coming into that hospital, the chronic alcoholic, who come into the hospital, get the same treatment, the same food, the same hydrotherapy, they get the same lunch, they get the same everything, knowing full well when they leave they got to chill from booze. And not only do they return to drinking again, they are in far worse condition than the previous visit. And man's been trying to answer that riddle since booze was invented. Hell, they've been dipping us, dunking us, giving us hobbies. They've been trying everything, right? And so he came up with a theory, all right, which is what we're going to talk about. He came up with a theory. He stuck his neck out on the line. Now, he also hedged. If you can get your hands on a first edition, when you read the end of his statement in the doctor's opinion, it doesn't say William D., very truly yours, William D. Silkworth. It says, very truly yours, anonymous physician. He hedged until the second edition. And then he said, okay, you can put my name down, right? But here's what he means, right? Because, see, Silkworth's theory is different. Because, see, even today, the vast majority of the populations think that I'm just a friggin' loser, right? That I'm a weak-willed SOB, and if I loved them enough or liked them enough or tried harder enough or whatever, I could stop drinking if I wanted to. Because most of us probably have that guy or that gal in our family tree. Aunt Sue, who was drinking herself silly, and she just prayed about it and stopped. And why can't you be like Aunt Sue? Well, maybe Aunt Sue's a friggin' disco drunk. I don't know. But I ain't Aunt Sue. All right? So, I kind of lost my place there. Oh, so Silkworth's theory is a little different, right? He says that we have something wrong with our bodies rather than our minds, right? We have something wrong with our minds, but there's a physical component to it as well. So on Roman numeral 28, XXVIII, we're going to get down to the nuts and bolts. He says, we believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol in these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. All right? An allergy is nothing more than an abnormal reaction to something I eat or drink, right? I have an abnormal reaction. He's saying if I'm a real alcoholic, my body reacts differently to booze than it does in 90% of the world's population. I am set apart from, you dig? An allergy, right? Now, look, I don't break out into hives and stuff when I drink. I've broken into some stuff, but I don't break out, right? This is how the allergic reaction reacts in me. It says, is a manifestation of an allergy that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. So Silkworth is saying if I'm a real alcoholic, I have this allergy to alcohol. My body processes it differently than it does in normal people. And it manifests itself in the form of a craving. The only thing one glass of vodka has ever done for me is convince me that the next one's going to be better. And that's a question I have to answer in my heart of hearts. Can I control how much I drink? Because once I drink it, I trigger this phenomenon of craving. I am powerless to stop it. It is beyond my control. Like, I've got a little nephew, right? Well, he's not little anymore. We're all getting old, but he's like 30-something years old now. But back when he was like 4 or so, we were at my grandparents' house for Christmas, and little Doug reached his hand into a candy dish and grabbed it was full of nuts and stuff, and ate a handful of that stuff, and damn near died a couple days before Christmas. Had to rush him to the emergency room, and he has the nut allergy, right? We could call Doug right now, and we could take up a collection right now with all the money we got, and we could call little Doug today and say, Doug, I got $5,000. Eat a handful of nuts. And you know what he's going to say? Oh, heck no. You know why? He don't want to die. His body, once he eats nuts, there's nothing he can do to prevent that allergy. No amount of good deeds, praying, he's going to have the reaction. Same thing with alcohol. Once I start drinking, I cannot control how much I drink. And that's a question I've got to answer in my heart of heart. Can I call my numbers out there? Can I step over to the nearest bar room, take a couple of drinks, try some controlled drinking, and leave abruptly? No. I had a psychiatrist give me that test one time. He said, John, I'm going to be out of town for 8 days. 8 days from now, we're going to have our next appointment. You seem to be a vodka man above everything else. He said, let's do a little test. And I said, all right, I'm ready for a test. He says, vodka's your drink? And he said, what's your favorite vodka? And at the time I said, Absolute. He said, great. Pick a number. Pick a number of drinks. And I said 3, because I'm smart. He says, all right, from today till the time of our next meeting, I want you to drink 3 Absolute drinks, no more, no less, every day till I get back, and let's have our meeting next week. Like, awesome. Thought I got him on a loophole because we didn't talk about the size of the glass, you dig? Left the appointment. On the way home, I stopped by the liquor store. Just so happened that the big bottles were on sale, and being conscientious of cost, I got the big bottle, put it in the freezer, and I couldn't wait to begin my test day, right? And later on that evening, it's time to take the test. I poured a glass of Absolute, put it on some ice, drank it down. It was awesome, right? Because I got 2 more to go. I drank the second one. That was even better. And the third one, and you know what I realized at the third one? Bad day to take a test. Because I drank the whole bottle of vodka and did that until my next meeting, because that's the way I roll. If I haven't drank in 14 and a half years, if I leave here and go get me even a 40, it ain't stopping there. No matter how great the necessity of the wish, that sets me apart from my fellow man. And it says, these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. I got to read the labels. It's the cold and flu season. I can't go down to the local grocery store and load up on NyQuil. In case you haven't tried it, NyQuil will get you where you need to go. So will Listerine. You know, I got to read the labels. Now, treatment centers 1 through 5 for me told me that this is why my life's unmanageable. And I like to test things, right? So let's see this next part. Is this why my life is unmanageable? It says these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit, found they can't break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon human, their problems pile up on them, they become astonishingly difficult to solve. And treatment centers saying that's why your life's unmanageable. Sounds good. Sounds really good. Sounds logical. Not true. Those are consequences. You drink like I do, from the time you come to till the time you pass out, day in, day out, problems pile up. They become astonishingly difficult to solve. It's very hard to problem solve, I've found, when you're blacked out. I mean, nobody ever called me after a blackout and said, hey, JK, you were so gosh darn helpful during your blackout last night and so thoughtful and considerate. Could you come over and do that again? No, I drank from the time I came to the time I went. Problems pile up. They become those are consequences. Consequence has nothing to do with why my life's unmanageable. We'll get to that in a second. It says frothy emotional appeal seldom suffice. Did your little loved ones, your family members, your boss threatening, that's a frothy emotion. The judge wagging his finger. Did frothy emotional appeal suffice? Not for long, at least, right? Sometimes it actually made for more drinking, right? The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. Let's take Dr. Bob, for example. There was a lot of great people in the town of Akron, Ohio that loved Dr. Bob dearly. He was part of the Oxford group, Henrietta Seiberling and all of those people. They loved Dr. Bob. They tried everything. They had a spiritual program of action, and they're trying to get Dr. Bob on the path. And he couldn't stay sober. They had a solution. They didn't know what the problem was until he met Bill Wilson. And Bill Wilson didn't bang him over the head or anything like that. They identified with each other. He had a message of depth and weight for Dr. Bob, right? He had a program of action, but more importantly, he knew what the problem was. And until I know what the problem is, I can't apply a solution. You know, that's like if we leave to go back to the hotel tonight and we get out there to Bill's truck and he turns the key and it just clicks, right? And we try and we can't get that sucker started. And I'm like, I got it, Bill, where's your jack? And I jack up his car and change all 4 tires. I've applied a program of action. I've changed all his friggin' tires. It doesn't fix the problem, you know? So I got to find out what the problem is. Down at the bottom of the page, this is some cool stuff. And he says, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And that's a true statement. Normal men and women who have a cocktail or something, they like, they like it. Ladies, this is going to sound sexist, and I don't mean, like I said, I'm old. I'm not trying to be sexist. But when I read this, I always have that image ingrained in my head. It's probably from Fathers Knows Best, but whatever. They're like, Fathers Knows Best, what's that? But I always have this, the kids are doing their homework at the kitchen table, and the wife's making dinner, and dad comes home from a hard day at the office or the fields or whatever, and he gets in, he takes off his shoes, and he has a cocktail and maybe reads the sports page while the dinner's getting ready, and, it kind of loosens him up, and maybe he and his wife have a glass of wine or something for dinner, and they relax, and they help the kids with their homework, and they live happily ever after. Or to steal a bit from Joe and Charlie, it's like the guy that's sitting next to me on the plane who's got the John Grisham novel, and he orders like a scotch and soda, and it comes in those little bottles. A non-alcoholic created those little bottles, right? I used to fly back and forth to Lubbock to Dallas for college, and I swear to God, I'd get on Southwest Airlines, and as I'm walking past a flight attendant, I'd give her a 20, and I'm like, I need as many beers as you can carry down this aisle in the next 40 minutes. 11 was my record, by the way. But, anyway, so the guy takes a drink, he pours a little scotch into the glass. He doesn't even pour all of it. He stirs it around, he's reading. The guy never drinks. That's what they're talking about. People actually go to happy hour and have a margarita and some chips and are cool with it. Right? That's normal people. Alcoholic men and women drink essentially because we love the effect. I want the effect. Remember that first time? I told y'all last night, that first time, once I tried it, I was off to the races. I want that effect. All right? And I damn near gave up everything in my life and annihilated all these friendships to get that effect, and I can't stay at the effect. If they told me, John, 4.1 ounces of vodka will get you to the effect every time. The problem is I can't stay there because of the phenomenon of craving. I can't just drink to the effect and stop. I want the effect. The sensation is so elusive, right? I can't get there. Because if it is 2 or 3 drinks, I can't stay there because I got to keep on drinking. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, we have injuries coming into this fellowship. Too many times for my history, we get a new person in the room in discussion meetings and like, oh, we got a new person in the room. Let's tell them how we got here. And then AA devolves into this big, long fishing story of like, oh, you did that? Well, I did this, And then we put it out of our mind that the little old lady who comes for help, she didn't eat out of a dumpster. She didn't live on the street. But because of our ego, we're going to see who can be the biggest, baddest drunk out there, right? We have injuries. I have injuries. I've been to 5 treatment centers. That's an injury. When I was in first grade and they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, going to treatment wasn't one of them. Right? That's an injury. I've wrecked a whole bunch of cars, not mine. I've lost a lot of jobs. I've lost a lot of friendships. I've had to go to court. I've been in jails. I've had to pay attorneys. We could go on and on and on and on with injuries. But I got one we can probably all agree on, regardless of who you are. I got one we could all agree on. How about dignity? Did alcohol get you to do some things you never dreamed you'd do? End up with folks you never dreamed you'd end up with? Hell, I go home with Beyonce, wake up with Bigfoot, So we cannot it says, well, while we admit it is injurious, we cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. The truth is, I drink, I get drunk, bad things happen. That is the truth. I mean, if I go back and look at all of the traumatic things in my life, 100% of them are a direct result of alcoholism. 100%. Every relationship, every school change, every job, every wreck, everything is a direct result of both. That is the truth in my life. What's the false? Today will be different. This time I'll drink like a gentleman. Never mind the fact that I have zero experience drinking like a gentleman. My brain comes up, today's the day. I'm not going to do shots of Grand Marnier or Jägermeister. I'm just going to have a couple of beers, watch the basketball tournament, and go home because I got a busy day at work. That's my illusion. That's insane. Because I've never done that. It doesn't matter what my intentions are. Doesn't matter. Have you ever said that to yourself? I'm just going to have a couple, nothing bad's going to happen. And the next thing you know, it's 3 days later. It says, to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. As I said before, growing up to be drinking myself to death was not on the horizon when I was first grade and they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. But that life became normal for me not to have a job. It became normal for me to basically be homeless. I had places to crash, but all bets were off once I left the door. You know, that became normal to me. It became normal for me not to have any family or friends. It became normal. And so you take the booze away. Somehow I shuffle or stumble into an Alcoholics Anonymous group, and the coffee's good and the girls are pretty and everybody, you know, they reach out in open arms, right? You take the booze out of the question, right? And I get that desire chip, and by God, I'm going to be a meeting maker, and I'm going to keep coming back. And the goose hangs high for a while. But here's where I'm at. They are restless, irritable, and discontent. Now, that's me in my normal nature. I'm not drinking. And for a day or 2 or 3 or 4, things get better. I can eat some solid food. I can start catching up on my sleep. I'm going to the local AA club, and things are good. I'm getting a little bit of hope. But at some point, and as I kept drinking through the years, that point got smaller and smaller and smaller. See, back in the day, I could do 30 days standing on my head. You know, I could do it with the best of them. 30 days not drinking, I can do that. Towards the end, I couldn't do a day. Right? But you take the booze away and something happens. Something changes. You know, I'll be at the meeting and everything's cool and I got the little job and I'm okay and I'm going to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting and I become restless. You know? And it's not like big stuff happening in my life. I'm just restless. Like I'm watching the football game and I realize it's halftime and I don't know what the hell's going on because in my head it's like a hamster cage. Right? I'm like thinking about, does she like me? Does she not like me? What about this? I think my mama loves my sister more than she loves me. Blah, 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 blah. Just I'm restless. Right? Can't be in my own skin. Restless. And then I'm irritable. Right? 1 minute I'm okay. 1 minute I'm down here. 1 minute you say my name and I'm like, what? Just a little jumpy. Irritable. And discontent. Oh, that's a good one for me. Poor me. I got to get another desire chip. I could have 40 years now, but I only got 4 days. I got to catch the DART bus, and the DART bus sucks. I don't have a good job. I can't get a this. Restless, irritable, discontent, stone cold sober. And you see me at the meeting, and I'll tell you how great I'm doing. And I go along for that for a little while, and that's how I live. Just glad to be sober today. And pretty soon my mind comes up with, psst, hey, I know what'll fix that. And sometimes it's just suddenly, and I'm off to the races, stone cold sober. It says we're restless, irritable, discontent, unless we can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks they see others take it with impunity. After we have succumbed to this desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. We pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution never, ever to do it again. And that's repeated over and over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, you're screwed. Welcome to step one. And before I read that next little paragraph on the doctor's opinion, I'm going to give you the bad news of step one. Go to page 24, the real in your hymnal. 24. Because this is what kills me as an alcoholic. This is the bad news of step one. Oh, it's bad to have the allergy because I can't control how much I drink. But here's the bad news of step one. This is why my life is unmanageable. It's in italics. And they told me if it's in italics in this book, it's important. So mine is underlined. And it says, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. It galls me to no end to hear a speaker get up here and say, I'm so-and-so, and I choose not to drink today. And I'm like, well, why don't you get a hobby then? Why are you here? Because if I could choose not to drink, I would be doing something else. Right? I've lost the power of choice in drink. So let's play along. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. Don't let anybody tell you that you ain't got no willpower. We got willpower. You know how you can test that? Try to get someone in this room to do something they don't want to do. Let me know how that works out for you. If I don't want to, this guy, I was telling Bill earlier, I love shoes, man. I don't know, it's weird for a guy, but I love shoes. And this guy, I wanted this pair of shoes, this pair of Nikes. He's like, well, I don't have those. I have these in your size. I'm like, no. He's like, well, dude, I have these in your size. And I'm like, I don't give a crap if you're giving them away for free. I want what I want. You know, I got willpower, except for booze. Here's the catchy part. Here's the tricky part. It says we're unable at certain times. I love that, certain times. Sometimes, occasionally, usually at the worst possible time, I'm unable at certain times to bring into my consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. Treatment centers are telling me to play my movie. Play your tape. Remember how you just don't remember. Play your tape through. That just tells me that I ain't going to remember. What I just read tells me the day I stop drinking, the clock is ticking. The further I get removed from the drink on my own, I am going to be unable at a certain point to remember what it was like. So let's do a little test. I want everybody to close your eyes. Think of the worst, most degrading experience you ever had as a result of drinking. Don't blurt it out, please. I had a kid blurt it out at Homeward Bound one night, and I'm like, oh my God, really shocked. Okay, think of that. You got that in your head? What were you doing a couple of days later? It don't matter. I mean, if a degrading experience kept me from drinking, I'd have stopped that. You know, when you pee in a girl's closet because you think it's the bathroom, that's pretty embarrassing, right? That didn't stop me, right? And believe me, that's not the worst thing I ever did, right? I'm unable at certain times. I literally, like I told you last night, I've literally stone cold sober been walking down the street, minding my own business, not a cloud on the horizon, and come out of a blackout. All right? That is why my life is unmanageable. Left to my own devices, I am unable to manage the decision to stay away from booze. I cannot not drink on my own. That is why my life is unmanageable. All the other stuff, that's consequences. So let's go back to the doctor's opinion real quick, and we'll wrap it up there. So I gave you the doom and the gloom, but here's a little hope. And it says, on the other hand, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once the psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary, follow the steps. Right? So they're giving me a little bit of hope. You know, and they spend from this book all the way up through chapter 1, 2, and 3, talking about alcoholism as they know it. Let's look at page 30 real quick, because I love this first couple chapters. It says, most of us have been unwilling to admit we are real alcoholics. If you would have met me as a freshman or sophomore in high school, I'd have told you I was an alcoholic. You know? I was proud of it. You met me 10 years later, I'd have been denying it. You know, I smell a little booze. Did you? Well, I just had a couple, you know. Didn't want to be a real alcoholic. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. I'm bodily different from the allergy. I'm mentally different because I have a mental obsession that leads me to the drink even though I don't want to drink. Right? I'm condemned. It says, therefore, it's not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink like other people. Again, I go back to my illusion that I'm going to drink like a normal person, but I got zero experience doing that. I love this next part. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. My obsession is that today I'm going to control and enjoy it. You ever have a sweetie pie, you're going to the Christmas party and they're going to try to limit your drinks? That's why God invented flasks. She couldn't understand why I only had 2 beers and I'm S-faced. Because I got a stash in the car, you know. I can't control, and if I was controlling, I wasn't enjoying it. If I was enjoying it, there was no control. And he calls it an obsession, an unhealthy regards to something, right? It's like if I'm obsessed by her, we have another word for that today. It's called stalking. You can go to jail for that, obsession, right? The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. What is my illusion? That I can control and enjoy it. What is an illusion? Something that appears real that's not. It's like if I turn my book into a parakeet, did I really do it or did I fool you? That's what an illusionist does. He makes things appear that seem real that aren't. My illusion is that I can control and enjoy, that I can drink like a normal man. I cannot. And it says the persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it to the gates of insanity or death. Again, 15 years old, my first drink, that was not on the horizon, but that's where alcohol took me to. The gates of insanity or death. It says we learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were the real deal. This is the first step in the recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. And I did a lot of smashing of those delusions out there working on getting here. But where I was finally smashed was that first night back sitting down with Cliff Bishop, and we were in that identification process, and he just kept hammering on the step 1 stuff and smashing those delusions that I will be like those other people, because I'm not. Remember in Fred's story when he came back to the hospital the second time and Fred conceded to both points? Did they hit their knees and do a third step prayer? No. They piled on him heaps of evidence, right? That's what they're talking about. You know, later in this chapter, they give us some analogies. We got the jaywalker, which the first time I read the jaywalker, I thought that is the most stupid story ever. Until I realized that's what my family thought of me with regards to alcohol. It fits perfectly. And then we've got Jim. And then we've got Fred. I love Fred's story. Fred's story is a great example of how we 12-step someone. Right? And notice the first time when they met Fred, and Fred said he had a plan. Right? He was going to stay on guard. Right? That was Fred's plan. Notice that the guys in AA then, they didn't say, well, that sucks. That's stupid. You're going to die drunk, Fred. They didn't say that. They kept it friendly. Hey, Fred, we wish you the very best. If you need anything, here's our number. You know? They kept it friendly. And so when Fred did screw up, he knew who he could talk to. And that's how we're supposed to do that. If you look on page 44, they give us a little test. We agnostics. We antagonists, as some people call it. It says in the preceding chapters, you've learned something of alcoholism. We hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. Well, we've got that hard drinker out there that looks kind of like us at the bar room or the office place or whatever. They seem to drink and get drunk or whatever, but given sufficient reason, that person can stop or moderate. Like I've got a buddy in Dallas who's got 3 DWIs. He can drink with the best of them, right? He's not an alcoholic. He's very unlucky, you know? 3 times, at least that we know of, he should have called a cab. He didn't. He got caught. But he's not one of us. He's a hard drinker. He may well die a few years before his time, but he's not one of us. Given sufficient reason, he can stop or moderate. If he needs to stop for a job, he'll stop. It's no big deal. I'm not like that. On the other hand, I got 0 DWIs, and I'm a driver. I drive all over the country. 0 DW. I just never got caught. So I can't judge it on that. So here's a little test. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. I've quit. Can't quit entirely. Second half of step 1, my life is unmanageable. Or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take. Right? Can you call your numbers? It's an either or proposition. It says you're probably an alcoholic. If that's the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And right there, my old prejudices came to the surface. Because I thought this spiritual experience, I got, sitting, well, my HP does this, and I'm just thinking you guys are full of what. That was my prejudices coming in. But you look on the next page, they give me some hope. They say something like the first half of the first people, they had a prejudice as well. They were either atheist, agnostic. God didn't sit right with them, but they got to the power regardless. Right? So that gives me a little bit of hope. On 45, at the end of the first paragraph, he says, our human resources as marshaled by the will were not sufficient. They failed utterly. That means me trying to do battle with alcoholism fails utterly. That means each and every time. With scant chance of success. They failed utterly. It says lack of power, that's our dilemma. Powerless, lack of power. Right? That's my dilemma. And see, right there, I'm thinking this higher power thing, there's not, what's this deal about a power greater than myself, And you may run across those people who don't believe in a power greater than themselves. Well, I got one that we can probably all agree on. How about booze? Booze was a power greater than me, without a doubt. It licked me. Booze owned me. Even when I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about drinking or thinking about not drinking. Even when I wasn't drinking, booze owned me. But look what he says. We had to find a power by which we could live. Could I live by booze anymore? Nope. So I got to find a power. It's not booze. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves, and it ain't me. So there is a power. It ain't booze. It ain't me. What am I going to do? But how and where are we going to find this power? I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The next line tells you. That's exactly what this book is all about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself that will solve your problem. And they didn't say my drinking problem. They said it's going to solve my problem. So in the early days, my first couple days of sobriety, my sponsor had me reading all through this stuff. And if I had some questions, I asked some questions. And we got it all right here, And you flip over here, and let's go on page, let's see here. Let's do page 58. We read it all the time in meetings all over the world. Hell, I could have recited it, drunk. Let's break it down a little bit. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. True statement. Even true statement today. The guys that I sponsored that thoroughly follow the path are sober today. Problem is rarely do I see anybody follow the path today. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of easier, softer ways, and some of these people got to try all those like me till they get to the spot. It says, those who do not recover, people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Cannots and will nots. I was a will not for a lot of years. I thought AA was crappy. I thought this was hokey. I thought I was a will not. I was convinced that the next thing was going to fix it. I was a will not. There's a lot of cannots out there. They've gone to the well one too many times. Psych wards and mental hospitals are full of those people. You may have some in your family. They're called wet brains. They ain't ever coming back. There's those people who cannot get honest with the fact, right? It says they are such unfortunates, they are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally capable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. The first place I got to get honest was step 1. Am I or am I not a real alcoholic? And even today, if I'm rigorously honest, you know what that means? That means today when I get up, I pray. That means today as I go through the day, I keep God with me. That means today as I go through the day, I talk to my sponsor. That means as I go through the day, I try to reach out to the new guy. I talk to the guys that I sponsor. That is being rigorously honest for my life today. If I cannot do that, it doesn't matter if I'm on steps 9, 10, 11, and 12. If I stop being rigorously honest, I just start backsliding all the way down. And the next thing you know, I got a drink in my hand. It says their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. So if I can get honest, I got a shot. It says our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. So if you're ever invited to tell your story, A, it's a privilege. It's not my birthright. And in a general way, I'm supposed to describe what I was like, what happened, and more importantly, what I'm like now. The first one's a mulligan. The first time you do your story, it's going to be all about what it was like. And then you're going to go, oh, crap, I'm out of time. And then you get, but we want it to be more about what I was like, because I want to know how you're living now. That's what gets me. I know how to drink, right? It says, if you've decided you want what we have, and you're willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take this test. Oh, you may want what I got, but if you ain't willing to go to any length, don't waste our time. Don't waste your time. It's not going to work. At some of these, we balked. You think? I have never seen a guy come into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and look at those 12 steps and go, oh, where the crap has this been all my life? I can't wait to clear up the wreckage of my past. This is awesome. At some of these, we balked. Dr. Bob balked first go round. He didn't want to make amends. He didn't want to damage his reputation or his family's. Right? At some of these, we balked. It says we thought we could find an easier, softer way. There's lots of easier, softer ways. Get a hobby. Just go to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. Stick and move. Go to this group and go to that group so nobody gets to know who you are. It's like auditing a class. Why on God's green earth anybody would audit a class in college is beyond me, because if you're there, you might as well get credit for it. Right? An easier, softer way. It says, but we couldn't. They couldn't either. They couldn't figure it out. It says, with all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. I had to let go. I've been hanging on for dear life. I got to let go. How I let go? I drank a lot of vodka to get me to the spot to where I was ready to let go. I love this part. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. I love that. Cunning, alcoholism. Cunning, lying in wait to ensnare through trickery and deception. Alcoholism is just waiting for me to get a little too cocky, get a little too selfish or resentful, get a little too restless and irritable, discontent before alcohol says, psst, hey, I know what'll fix that. Cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has there's one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. Half don't get you half in AA. Let me ask you a question. Can you be half drunk? If I was still drinking and I came to your fair city and I was desperately in desire for some alcohol and I didn't know where the nearest liquor store, and I go up to Bill and ask him for directions, and I'm like 5 miles away and he gives me turn by turn directions to the liquor store, and I go halfway there, do I get half drunk? No. I launch on a course of vigorous action, turn by turn, to get to the liquor store. It says, we stood at the turning point. What's this turning point? Step 1, I'm screwed. Step 2, I hope what worked for you will work for me. Why? Because I'm screwed in step 1. Moving on. I'm at the turning point. What am I going to do with this? As we ask his protection and care with complete abandon. I think I'm getting close to running out of time, aren't I? Like 10 minutes? 15? Cool. All right, so let's do these ABCs on page 60. A, that we're alcoholic and could not manage our own lives? Check. I'm 35 years old. I'm drinking myself to death, and I'm calling the shots. Can't manage my own life. B, that probably no human power could relieve my alcoholism. A lot of my brothers all went to seminary. They've been praying, dipping, dunking. I mean, they have tried. Dr. Phil talking about my inner child is not cutting it. I'm beyond human aid. C, that God could and would if he were sought. Didn't know much about God coming in, but it worked for you, and I hope it worked for you. Why? Because I'm desperate in step 1. It says being convinced of this, we're at step 3, which is that we decide to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand him. If you ever come across somebody in your group and you say, well, where are you at today? And you go, I'm just turning it over. If I knew how to turn my life over to the will of God, I would have done that a long time ago. I do not know how to do that. The next few pages, they're going to describe what they mean. The rest of the 164, they're going to show me how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as we understand him. And it says, the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. I'm 35, no job, my family has shunned me, no prospects, no, I'm in the gutter. Yes. Right? And it says, on that basis, we're almost always in collision with somebody or something, even though our motives are good. Right? My motives are tricky. Because I may do you a solid, but I can assure you I'm holding that good deed in escrow, waiting to collect at a later date. Therefore, negating the good deed that I just did. All right? So Bill's going to go on to talk. So he gives us an analogy. He says, like I'm an actor who wants to direct the movie. They sign me up to say one line in the movie, and I show up to do it, and I'm telling them how to do the lights, the scenery, and everything else. Because that's my life. Because my illusion in my life is that if she'll do it this way, and my boss will do it that way, and my mama will love me like she loves my sister, that we will all be very, very happy and sing Kumbaya. And if I got to be real, real nice to do that, I can do that. And if that doesn't work, screw you. And that's my illusion. And what happens? It doesn't go off very well. And what do I think? Well, first of all, I try harder. So here I am, calling the shots. It blows up in my face. And what do? Try harder. Throw more me at the problem, which is me. Right? And then I feel that life doesn't treat me right. Mr. Sad Sack. Right? So he goes on and tells us about that. On page 62, he just hits us right between the eyes. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Really? I thought booze would be the root of my troubles. Oh, no. Booze is the symptom. Selfishness, self-centered, that's the root of my troubles. Right? Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. Look at page 52, the bedevilments. Find one that's not selfish. If you need cats, or maybe in your group you have the on the beam, off the beam. Lots of times they have them in treatment centers. They have the on the beam stuff, characteristics, and the off the beam. I always tell the guys at Homeward Bound, I'll give you a $100 bill right now. Find me one of those off the beams that's not selfish. It's all self. It's all self. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. We step on the toes of our fellows, they retaliate. Then he goes on to say, so our troubles we think are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. It's all chaos in the background, but I think I'm doing okay. Everybody else knows I'm a nut job, but I think I'm okay. Again, going back to they say in the fellowship, there ain't no must in the big book. Well, here you go. Here's 2 musts in the big book, followed by a promise that'll kill you. It says, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And you can take that however you want to take it. How is my selfishness going to kill me? So if I'm spending all my time in fear, self-delusion, if I'm spending all my time in my head thinking about me, how am I going to help you? I won't. If I'm spending all my time in my head not helping you, how am I going to stay sober? I won't. That's how selfishness kills me. And it says there seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. I can't fix my selfishness. Have you ever tried to be less? What are you doing? I'm working on my selfishness. Wrong answer. Me working on my selfish is More selfish. Right? I can't fix my selfishness. So he says we had to have God's help. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, I had to quit playing God. Oh, I don't play God. Oh, yeah? Did you ever do something for somebody and you didn't get the result that you wanted? Did it kind of make you feel a little pissed off? You were playing God. We all do it. Everybody does it. I had to quit playing God. Why? It didn't work. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God is going to be the director. He is the principal. We're his agents. He's the father. We're his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was a keystone of a new and triumphant arch to which we passed to freedom. All right? Freedom. I don't think about drinking today. I don't think about not drinking today. It's been removed. It does not exist. All right? So in the middle of the page, there's the third step prayer. And here it is. It says, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Right? So I'm hooking up with God. And it says, relieve me of the bondage of self, fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Like, take these steps. Pretty simple. Take away my difficulties, fear, self-delusion, self-seeking. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, thy way of life, may I do thy will always. Exclamation point. That's a third step prayer. I surrender. I ask God for help. Even if I don't believe in God, I ask for help. Something. Help me. Right? That's the third step prayer. It says you can read it out of the book or you can use your own words. Mine, what I told you last night, mine was shaking and vibrating as I was. It was like, dear God, I've tried to get sober since 88 and I'm scared and I don't want to die drunk. I need your help. Please give me the willingness to do whatever I got to do to get what's in this book. Amen. Let's look at the top of the page. When we sincerely take such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. Right? We have a new employer. Now, that's a cool concept for God. God's the employer. What does that make me? The lowly employee. Like a new hire. Like I'm on probation, you know? And if I'm a new hire at a new job, that means I got to show up on time, do my work. If I expect to get any benefits or paid, I got to do my job. So that's a pretty cool little concept. But it says, so he's the employer, and it says, being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. And Clifford said, underline it. I underline it. He says, there's your job description till the day you die. What's my job? Stay close to God, perform his work well. I've modified it a little bit for my guys today. Our job today, stay close to God, do this work today, no matter what happens. That is my job. All the other crap, that's God's job. Today, just like it was 14 years ago, my job is to stay close to God and do this today. Whether I get hired, whether I get fired. She comes back, she leaves. They're born, they die, it don't matter. My job is to do my job. That shows God my gratitude. That's pretty slick. In that third step prayer, I made a commitment with my sponsor and with the God of my understanding that day that I was going to get off my butt and take these steps. And I felt really, really good doing that third step, but I got a whole lot of blocking me. So I did my fourth and my fifth, and I got to find out the truth about me. Selfish, arrogant, egotistical, full of fear, and I'll do absolutely anything to get my way, and look at what the damage I created. And I got a whole host of amends. 6 and 7, this is the stuff that's killing me, my fourth step. This is the stuff that kills me. If this is the stuff blocking me from the power, am I willing to let go? That's all I know. Step 6 separates the men from the boys. Because if this is all I know, they're telling me to let go. I wasn't willing to hang on to it. I don't want my old life back. I was willing to let go. It says if you're not, pray about it. You could have it all. I don't want this garbage. So I did a 7-step prayer. I started working on my 8 steps. So one Sunday afternoon, 11 days sober, I did step 5, step 6, step 7, and started on my 8-step list. Monday, I made my first amends. Right? My sponsor is going to guide me through these amends. Right? There's some conditions. I have to have a sincere desire to right the wrong and go to these people in a helpful and forgiving spirit. The results are what God does. Tom Ivester, if you know him, he's been sober since 57. He has the best line ever. I steal it. I told him I stole it years ago. When faith and preparation collide, the results are what God does. It's not my job to figure out how the amends are going to work out. I go to these people in a helpful and forgiving spirit with sincere desire to right the wrong. I talk to my sponsor about it. I pray about it. I go do the amends. My actions, the more actions I take, the more faith that I get. What was at first a flimsy reed turns out to be the hand of God. Step 10 is all about, on a daily basis, me hooking it back up with God. Right? Keeping my path clean. I can't afford to let resentments and fears and all that garbage block me. So that's how I do it in step 10. Step 11, God, like this, throughout the day. It tells me instructions for in the morning. The only place in the book where it tells me to relax and take it easy, in the morning, in my meditation. That's it. The rest of the time, move. Step 11, throughout the day. Something good happens, that's God's deal. Something bad happens, that's God's deal. It's cool. We can deal with it. Doesn't matter what's happening in my life. I got the tools with God's help to get through it. Good stuff. I mean, I don't know how some of the stuff has happened in my life. Step 12 is, now that I have recovered, how do I carry on? And they show me how to work with others. The reason I'm not dead, I guarantee you in my heart of hearts, is because God designed me to do all of that stuff to get me to the spot, to get sober, so that I can reach out to my brothers and sisters who are dying just like I am. That is my purpose. That is my primary purpose. That is why I'm sucking air today. And that's open to each and every one of us. The whole book changes from 88 to 89. 88 and before is all about we. Starting on page 89, it turns the finger right back to me. You. And I'm eternally grateful for the cats in my group who got me in the game early. They didn't care that I had 2 days of sobriety. Go here, help out, take some smokes, take some little red books, be a part of. And for the first time in my life, I was willing to do whatever I had to do. And so my prayer each and every day for God, for me, I don't really pray for myself. I'd like to win Powerball. God knows that. I can't lie. I mean, I'd like to win. I mean, it'd be great. But my prayer for my God today is, God, just keep me hungry. Keep me hungry and keep me looking for you guys. Because that keeps me, I'm an old guy, but I got a 5-year-old. He just turned 5. And he is the love of my life. And I want to be there for him. And because of God in this program, I can be a good daddy. Because left to my own devices, I wouldn't have made it out of 1999. And there's a whole lot of ground to cover, but we're out of time. But I thank you very, very much. And I've just loved meeting all of you and hope we can talk some more. Thank you.